Most people learn Incoterms like it's a vocabulary test. EXW means X works. FOB means free on board. But the real question isn't the definition. The real question is, where does risk actually change hands in real life? Because that risk line is where projects get delayed, shipments get stuck, and buyers lose money. Today, we're going beyond basics. We'll focus on the most common and most misunderstood comparison for overseas buyers sourcing from China, EXW versus FOB. And I'll show you the real risk line, not the textbook line, so you can choose the right term for your next order. Let's start with a simple truth. When you buy from China, most losses do not come from the factory price. They come from the gaps between steps. The moment something goes wrong, everyone asks, who is responsible? And the answer depends on where the risk line is drawn. So first, what is EXW in plain English? EXW means the supplier makes the goods available at their location. That could be the factory gate or sometimes a warehouse. From that point on, the buyer is responsible for almost everything: pickup, domestic transport, export customs, port handling, international freight, insurance, and destination clearance. On paper, EXW sounds like control. Many buyers think, if I handle shipping myself, I can save money. Sometimes that's true. But for many overseas buyers, especially small and medium businesses, EXW creates hidden risks. Now, what about FOB? FOB means the supplier is responsible until the goods are loaded on the vessel at the port of shipment. The supplier handles export clearance and delivers the goods to the port. Once the goods are actually on board, risk transfers to the buyer. So in theory, FOB is simpler for buyers because the supplier covers the China side export process. But here's the beyond basics part. The biggest difference between EXW and FOB is not the price. It's the risk you take on inside China before the goods even reach the ship. Let me explain the real risk line using a practical example. Imagine you are buying 1,000 pieces of a product from a factory in Guangdong. Your plan is to ship from Shenzhen. Under EXW, you or your forwarder needs to do all of these steps inside China. Arrange pickup from the factory. Manage loading and truck arrival timing. Handle domestic transport to the port or warehouse. Prepare export documents. Declare customs and clear export. Pay port charges and arrange handover to the carrier. Now, here's where the risk line becomes real. If the truck shows up late and the container misses the cutoff, the vessel is gone. You pay extra storage. You pay a rebooking fee. Your delivery date slides. If the export documents have mistakes, customs can hold the shipment. You lose time. Sometimes you pay fines. Sometimes the shipment gets opened and inspected. If your forwarder uses the wrong HS code or underdeclares, you may be exposed to compliance issues later. And here's one of the biggest surprises for buyers. Under EXW, many factories are not legally responsible for export clearance and export documents. They may not want to provide certain documents under their name, or they may not have the proper export license set up for that specific transaction. So you might hear phrases like, "We can't do export," "Use a trading company," "Use our partner," or "You need to arrange everything." This is not always a scam. Sometimes it's just how the factory is structured. But for overseas buyers, it creates a messy situation. You thought you were saving money, but now you have extra middlemen, extra fees, and extra risk. Now let's look at FOB. Under FOB, the supplier handles China-side export clearance and delivers to port. That usually means the supplier arranges domestic trucking to the port. The supplier works with their broker to handle export customs. The supplier ensures export documents match the shipment. The supplier coordinates the handover until the goods are on board. For many buyers, this removes the hardest part of the process: export clearance inside China. But FOB is not magic. It has its own risks. Here's the key point. With FOB, you still need to be clear on what FOB includes in your supplier's quotation. Because some suppliers say FOB, but they quote in a way that quietly excludes certain charges. For example, they may include trucking to port, but not include terminal handling charges. Or they may not include the documentation fee. Or they may treat special packaging or palletizing as extra. So you must always ask, please list what is included in your FOB price. Now, let's talk about the real risk line. In the textbook, the risk line is EXW at factory gate, FOB when goods are on board. But in the real world, risk shifts earlier or later, depending on how the shipment is actually managed. Because the real risk line is not only about who pays, It's about who controls the process and who can solve problems fast. Let's break down the most common real-world risk scenarios. Scenario 1. The supplier finishes production late. This happens all the time. Under EXW, if production is late, your forwarder's pickup schedule breaks. Your booking might expire. Your container plan changes. Under FOB, the supplier usually manages the last-mile trucking and export timing, so they can sometimes adjust more smoothly, but only if they are organized and motivated. Scenario 2. Packaging is not export-ready. Maybe cartons are too weak. Maybe labels are missing. Maybe the packing list doesn't match the real cartons. Under EXW, your forwarder might pick up the goods without checking details. Problems show up later at the port. Now you have a delay and a dispute. Under FOB, the supplier is closer to the problem, but again, they might still push goods out quickly without careful checks. This is why you need a quality control and packing verification step, regardless of Incoterms. Scenario 3. Customs holds the shipment. This is the big one. Under EXW, if your forwarder is handling export, the factory may not cooperate quickly when customs requests extra documents. They may say, "Not our responsibility, talk to your agent." Under FOB, the supplier is the exporter, so they have stronger responsibility to provide documents, respond to customs, and fix discrepancies. This is one reason many experienced buyers prefer FOB for China sourcing. Now you might ask, should you always choose FOB? Not always. Here's a practical decision rule we often share with clients at Yansourcing. Choose FOB if you are a small or medium overseas buyer. You don't have a trusted forwarder with strong China operations. The factory is not experienced in export documentation. Your shipment is time-sensitive. You want fewer moving parts inside China. Choose EXW only if you have a reliable China-based logistics partner. You understand export clearance responsibilities. Your forwarder can manage pickup, customs, and documentation smoothly. You want tighter control on China-side logistics and costs. The factory prefers EXW due to their structure. Now let me highlight one very important point that many buyers miss. EXW can shift risk to you before you even see the goods properly. Because once the goods leave the factory, any damage during loading or trucking can become a dispute. The factory can say, "It left our premises. It's not our issue." So if you use EXW, you must protect yourself with 2 steps. First, confirm packing standards in writing. Carton strength, pallet requirements, moisture protection, labels. Second, verify the loading and handover. At minimum, get clear photos and counts at pickup. Ideally, do a pre-shipment inspection and a packing check before pickup. Now, where does Yansourcing fit into this? This is exactly the gap we help buyers close. Because Incoterms are just a framework. The real success comes from execution. Confirming the right term for your situation, aligning the supplier quote details, ensuring export-ready packing, checking documentation consistency, coordinating with the forwarder, and preventing issues before the goods move. Our team is based in China, so we can coordinate with the factory locally, verify goods and packing, and make sure the shipment is prepared correctly for your chosen Incoterm. If you're using FOB, we help make sure the supplier's FOB actually includes the right items and the export process is handled cleanly. If you're using EXW, we help manage the China side pickup coordination, confirm packing, and reduce the handover risk at the factory gate. Now let's close with a quick summary. EXW and FOB are not just definitions. EXW puts more responsibility and risk on you inside China, especially around pickup, export clearance, and handover. FOB reduces China-side complexity for most overseas buyers, but you must confirm what charges are included and make sure the supplier can execute. And in both cases, the most important thing is this. The real risk line is where control changes hands. If you don't control the process, you need someone local who can. If you want a China-based team to help you choose the right Incoterms, manage suppliers, verify quality and packing, and coordinate shipments, you can contact Yansourcing using the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and if you want more practical sourcing topics like this, subscribe for the next video.